by Benning. Darnell Nurse left it in the corner, gets up center. Perry scores! Corey Perry!
Lilia able to shake away from Solani. It's given away to Solani around in front. Score! Teemu Solani with the steal.
Three in the face, 1-1. Score! Off the floor! On the board! Paul Kariya!
Well, Christmas is over, but the Ducks are still giving gifts to other teams, specifically the Vegas Golden Knights, the Philadelphia Flyers, and the Arizona Coyotes. The theme of these last 4 games that we've missed, I guess I should introduce ourselves again, because it is now the first podcast of 2020. Pat is back on the Forever Mighty podcast. No longer, not the Patreon shows. You're back on the regular show. Welcome back. Yeah, there's a lot. It's not even. I feel like everybody's gonna think we're talking about the own goal, which we definitely are, but it's not even just that. Since our last show was, I think our last show was just before Christmas. There's been 4 games. The Ducks have played Vegas twice. They won one of them 4-3. They lost 2-1 to Philly in overtime, and then they lost 4-2 to Arizona. Not just Josh Manson, but pretty much everybody on the Ducks has been at fault for a giveaway or two, especially over the last 3 games. You look at even in the Philly game, the giveaway by Carrick that led to Philly's only goal in regulation for Sean Couturier. Manson kind of soft in front of the net on that one. And then the big one, this game, I think is going to be central to what we're going to be talking about today. But the Ducks 5-2 loss to Vegas because of everything that went on in that game. The giveaway at the beginning by Steele and Goodbranson that led to the first Vegas goal. The Josh Manson own goal, which is probably the weirdest own goal I've ever seen, and then obviously Henrique giving the puck away to Smith and the Marcia Show penalty shot. I think that game right there is probably one of the worst Ducks games I've seen in a long time, just in the fact that all 4 goals were a result of the Ducks either playing bad defensively or giving the puck away. That's the only thing I can think of, because the way he reacts, like he deliberately pokes the puck over the line because I think he thought the refs were going to blow the whistle. And then you see his reaction after, like he kind of flips out a bit, like he's like, "Why didn't you guys blow the whistle?" But even then, like don't just assume. Don't and even if you think the play is going to be dead, don't blow the whistle. Like don't assume the refs are going to blow the whistle.
He's come back from injury and has not been good. He's just really not been good.
Yeah, it's been a struggle for Josh Manson, and I don't want to say just since he came back from injury, but pretty much since the start of the season, it's been a struggle for Josh Manson. And at some point, we kind of gave him some credit that the Ducks had so many injuries, and he was their go-to guy on right side defense, especially. But it was him and Lindholm, and when you're getting pretty much every hard matchup, it's going to be tough. But when you're making mistakes like this, like when you're putting the puck in your own net, when you're down 1-0 after a bad giveaway to begin with, like that's unacceptable. And I think a lot of people have soured on Josh Manson over the last couple seasons, which you could say maybe it's fair, maybe it's not. But he's been making some mistakes like this, and I think this kind of takes the cake on his mistakes over the last couple years. But I have no idea what he was thinking on this play. It's one of those lapse in judgment kind of moments where you just forget what's going on. It's like in basketball where a guy puts the rebound into his own net, that kind of thing. So I don't know though. It was such a weird play, but it epitomizes the Ducks so far this year.
Yeah, I don't really understand what's going on with Josh Manson. I feel that the last 2 years, like you just said, have been kind of his slide and decline. He hasn't looked good. The Hampus Lindholm Josh Manson pair we thought we were going to have forever as being this near top tier defensive pair just hasn't come to fruition and stayed. We got glimpses of it, and we always complained about it under Randy Carlisle that they were never going to play together. How come Randy doesn't play them together? And now we see them night in and night out, and it just doesn't. It's not working the way it used to. It really isn't. In fact, the guy that we've been giving a lot of crap to over the past couple of seasons, who's looked great this year, has been Cam Fowler. Cam Fowler has been the Ducks' best defenseman easily, and he's not perfect, but he's definitely been the Ducks' best defenseman over the course of the first half of the season.
Yeah, I think there's no question he's been the best guy. I think offensively he's leading the way, definitely. I think he fits in what the style of play that Dallas Eakins wants the Ducks to play. I think that's exactly the game that fits the way he wants to play as well. And I think he's really been the only one that's been consistently good. I think Lindholm's been decent, but again, he's the guy that kind of gets that lion's share of responsibility on defense, right? Like, that is not what Cam Fowler gets. I don't want to say Cam Fowler is sheltered, but he doesn't get those matchups that Lindholm's getting, which frees Cam Fowler up to do what he does best, which is to exit the puck cleanly out of his own end and get up ice and put the puck in the back of the net, or set up another player. Basically putting up points is what Cam Fowler was supposed to do when the Ducks brought him in. A very impressive rookie season where he put up 40 points. Hasn't reached that since, and now obviously he's on pace to surpass that this year. This is the Cam Fowler that Ducks fans have been waiting for, and I guess Ducks management's been waiting for, is for him to succeed in the way he is this year. And it's taken them this long to realize that you need a style that suits his game, otherwise he's going to struggle. And for a long time we were all talking about who he's playing with and who he's partnered with, and that's the problem. But turns out that wasn't the issue. I mean, there was good argument for that because he was paired with Bieksa and Boschman and Lovejoy, now obviously Goodbranson. But it seems like it doesn't matter who he plays with, because Goodbranson wouldn't be a guy who'd say, oh, let's play Goodbranson with Fowler and that's going to unlock his potential. I think it has everything to do with the fact that Dallas Eakins just has a system implemented that allows Cam Fowler to succeed.
What do you think about the whole experiment with Brendan Gooley? How that kind of worked, then hasn't worked, and then worked, and then hasn't worked, and now we haven't seen him.
He's still young, so I'm not writing him off just yet. But it is disappointing, because obviously Brandon Montour is playing top pairing minutes in Buffalo right now, and we haven't seen the Ducks side of that deal come to fruition yet. Brandon Gooley looked really good at the end of last year, and it's been a bit of a struggle this year for him to get going, and obviously he's been sent down to San Diego a few times, and I think he's down there right now, is he not?
Mm-hmm.
I think so. So it hasn't been great, but I think with this deal, you have to wait it out. It's a long-term type play for the Ducks, and Brandon Gooley, I think, eventually will be an NHL player. At what caliber, I'm not sure, whether he's a top 4 or he's a 5 or a 6. And then you also have to see how Braden Tracy turns out as well. And I always hate to kind of base a trade like that on the draft pick, but it is a player the Ducks got in that deal. Yes, it is up to them to draft a good player, but I think ultimately it comes down to, if Gooley can just be a 4 or a 5 and just reliable and a steady player throughout his NHL career, as long as Braden Tracy makes the NHL and has some sort of impact with the Ducks, I think they still win this deal.
No, I agree with you on that. It's kind of hard for us to just encapsulate the last 5 or 4 games and judge what's been going on here. I think it's pretty safe to say that we have a very inconsistent team. The defense has gotten better. The offense hasn't really been there for Anaheim at all this year, outside of Jakob Silverberg, and then Getzlaf scoring at a higher rate than normal, but he's cooled off a bit. Ricard Raquel in the same light. The kids really haven't picked it up. We see little flashes here and there, but things just really aren't coming together the way the Ducks predicted, I feel like, this season. And you could see that with Bob Murray going out and trying to get defensemen, right? He's going out and trying to get a top-tier defender, wasn't able to do it, settles for Eric Goodbranson. Goodbranson's kind of been, I don't know, playing too many top-tier minutes, if you want my opinion on him. I don't think he's been horrible, but I don't think he's a top-line pair. He's more of a 4-5 if you're going to give him, his ceiling right now. What's the deal right now, do you think, with Bob Murray bringing Weidman up, not playing him, bringing Sprong up and not playing him, not playing these guys that have played pretty well in the AHL to try to give this team some sort of spark when things haven't come together like they thought?
I can kind of understand the call-ups because you're placing a guy on the IR, so you might as well fill that roster spot and bring a guy up. I think it was Getzlaf.
With Troy Terry being hurt.
Yeah, well, Troy Terry was hurt. Raquel was placed on the IR for a bit. I believe Getzlaf was placed on the IR for a bit as well. I think Raquel was the most recent one to get placed on the IR.
Upper body injury.
Yeah. So he's on the IR right now. So they brought up Chris Weidman. Sprong was already up. I think with the fact that Sam Carrick, along with Sprong and Weidman, got sent back down, that these guys are healthy and coming back. Obviously not Troy Terry, but Ricard Raquel, among others. I don't get it for Chris Weidman. That was a weird one. We've seen Sprong be called up, sent down numerous times this year. Same with Josh Mahura. Same with Sam Carrick. Max Jones, Maxime Comtois. All these guys at some point have been sent down and called up multiple times. But Chris Weidman made no sense. I mean, it was Ricard Raquel who went on the IR. It wasn't like they needed a defenseman to call up. It kind of felt like he was going to get at least a chance to play, if not this game, on Sunday coming up. And then they get sent back down. And maybe it is just a play in last night's Gulls game, and he'll get called back up today or tomorrow and play for them. I hope so. Because I think out of anybody down in San Diego right now, he's the guy not only that deserves the shot more than anybody, but that the Ducks need to give a shot to. I mean, he's a right shot defenseman. The Ducks are running Josh Manson, who's clearly struggling. Eric Goodbranson, I'll be the first one to admit, is playing better than I thought he would, but he's still not a guy you want to rely on. And then after that, you've got Corbinian Holzer. You're playing, Jakob Larson on the offside.
I mean, the Corbinian Holzer, as a forward a few games back, was pretty rough on the eyes too. Just a lot of what the F moments going on this season with the lineup, with personnel choices. What do you want to get into a little bit later, or now start talking about roster movement? With this team and how you see it shaping up. We got the trade deadline here in a few weeks.
Yeah, let's go into that. We'll go into it because I think the big discussion on Twitter yesterday, it kind of just came out of nowhere, but I guess it's been brewing for a while, and we've talked about it a few times, but about the Ducks being sellers at the deadline and potential roster movement and where guys could go and if guys are going to get called up. But obviously some big names that, at least for the last couple seasons, have been always in the news when it comes to who the Ducks could sell at the deadline, and obviously most of them are still here. But Adam Henrique, again, he was a big name at that last year's deadline. Andre Kasha more so in the offseason and the beginning of this year. And then Jakob Silfverberg, who last year, because he hadn't re-signed, was a potential player that could get moved. And now this year, especially with him being an all-star, being on pace for his first 30-goal season, his value's at, you could argue, the highest it's ever been. And I think he's right at the top of potential players that could get traded and bring in significant value for the Ducks.
Mm-hmm. Who on this roster right now do you think they should trade if you were to pick two guys?
Well, I think a big thing that comes into play is the expansion draft, right? Like we all know how the last one went. You look at what Shea Theodore is doing with Vegas right now. It stings a bit to think that you could still have him and how valuable he could be if the Ducks just prepared a little bit better for the Vegas expansion draft. And you would hope that when you look at who could be exposed and who you might lose in this one, that they start trying to make some moves. So we assume the Ducks are going to go with the 7 forwards, 3 defensemen again, right? Like I think I can't see them going 8 players. Can you? Like I can't.
No, they're not going to do that.
Yeah.
I'll answer the question for me first, then, just to throw it out there. By the time this team becomes cup competitive, division competitive, where they're going to go on a deep run and not sneak in on an 8th seed and on a wild card and lose in a sweep or lose in 5, you really have to look at trading guys like Jakob Silfverberg. Look at maybe trading a guy like Ricard Raquel. Very team-friendly deals. Still have term. Silverberg's almost 30, I think.
29.
I know Raquel's 25 or 26. Mm-hmm. I think those are both really good players that you should look at getting rid of. Obviously, getting rid of a guy like Josh Manson. I still think Manson has value around the league. He has that edge of toughness associated with his name that this league still very much loves. He's definitely a team guy. He's having a bad year. Maybe a change of scenery kind of makes things better for him.
He's that change of scenery type move.
Right, and that's what you could throw out there. Even if he's not going to be the guy elsewhere, he looks like he could be elsewhere. I think Ducks fans really, and there was a lot of stuff here on Twitter about how, the Ducks, a lot of people are, just shitting all over Anaheim and the way they're playing the past couple of years. And it's like the Ducks have been very competitive for the last decade. Yeah, they haven't won a cup, but they're at the point right now where they're not going to win a cup in the next 3 years. You really have to look at trading guys you don't want to trade. So I think those 3 guys, for me, are something we can get a return for. And a nice return for that would help this team out in the long run.
Yeah, and honestly, you have to do it now. And obviously, GMs aren't idiots. They know which teams are handicapped right now when it comes to the expansion drafts. Even with it being so far out, it's going to make discussions a bit tougher trying to get what you want for a guy. But the closer you get to that draft, the harder it is to deal a player. We've seen that with multiple teams for the last expansion draft. And right now, the Ducks, just a few of the guys that would be exposed, and you can only protect 7 of these forwards. You've got Henrique, Silfverberg, for Raquel, Kasha, Ritchie, and then, of course, the kids in Lindstrom, Steele, Jones, and Terry are all guys who would be exposed. Well, right there, that's 8 guys or 9 guys. So you're already leaving 2 of those guys exposed if you don't move anybody. And you don't want to lose any of them for nothing. I mean, maybe you're okay with losing Nick Ritchie for nothing, but do you want to lose Henrique for nothing when you could get assets for him? Same goes for Silfverberg, Raquel. I don't think you want to lose any of these kids in Lindstrom, Jones, Steele, or Terry for nothing when you don't exactly know what you're going to get out of them. So you've got to move forward, I think. And right now, the one that jumps off to me is the guy you should move, is the guy who, like I said earlier, whose value is the highest, and that's Jakob Silfverberg. First-time All-Star, like I said, on pace for 30 goals for the first time. Arguably,
didn't we say trade him last year too? And we didn't.
Yeah, well, we said trade him last year for different reasons because he was playing well, but he was a UFA, and it's like, do you want to sign this guy for 4 or 5 years? By the time his contract's over, he's 34, and I think we didn't think the Ducks would be competitive for another 3 or 4 seasons. What are you getting from Silfverberg at 33 that you could? Well, is that better than getting assets for him now when he's playing at his best? That's the argument I have, because I don't think with what the Ducks have coming up in the system, who they have in the roster right now, that even if best case scenario Trevor Zegras comes up next year and is a 60 to 70 point player, that the Ducks are legitimately contenders in the playoffs or even competing for a playoff spot. When you look at how bad they were last year and how bad they are this year, one player I don't think is going to do it unless that player was like a generational Connor McDavid type player.
Oh, I mean, McDavid hasn't even done it for Edmonton.
Exactly.
And he's got Draisaitl.
Exactly.
They're not even doing
right?
it.
So
everyone thought they were going to do it this season, and where's Edmonton right now? Not playing well.
Yeah. So again, that's why I think.
Can we hit the chat real fast because Shane's calling someone out on the podcast here. I haven't been here for several weeks. Who said that Josh Manson was our next captain? Was that you? You or Jason?
Oh man, I don't know. I think Jason. Maybe it was me.
Maybe it was along the lines of who they would pick for captain, right? Because he's got that tough edge to him. He's a defenseman. Maybe that's where it came up. That's funny.
Bad
Shane.
Doesn't mean he's not a good leader. He's just playing like shit right now. That's just. And
then Brett says that there's people talking about trading Gibson, which I thought was hilarious.
I saw that, yeah.
Doesn't make any sense at all. But he brings up a good point. He said Manson has only had one amazing year. So is he having a bad season, or is it his normal, right?
Yeah, I mean, it could be his normal, right? Because we mentioned this on the Patreon show yesterday, that Josh Manson, the best we've seen from Josh Manson was when the Ducks were playing good hockey. And he was playing with Hampus Lindholm, who we also said for Lindholm seems like there's some concerns that he isn't that guy in terms of the Doughty or, I'm trying to think of the best, the Yossi.
He's not a Doughty. Doughty puts up 50, 60 points in a great offensive year. That's not him.
The guy that no matter if your team is good or bad, his play doesn't really change. That guy, where he's just always consistently good. Not to say Lindholm's been bad, but it's not the Lindholm from 2 years ago or 3 years ago, where he was considered one of the best, the analytics darling, one of the most underrated defensemen in the league. I still think he's up there. I still think he's a great player. I just think he's kind of being exposed a bit because the Ducks are so bad, and it's hard to put him in that discussion that we were putting him before as, if he just puts up 20 more points, maybe he's a Norris Trophy winner. That's tough to say right now because the Ducks are so bad. And I think Josh Manson is struggling because he's not being propped up by Hampus Lindholm and a good Ducks team. And I think we're finally seeing what Josh Manson really is, which is a decent 4 or 5, but not a 3 or 4.
Ooh, I would say 3-4. I don't know if I'm putting Manson on a bottom pair. I don't think that's fair.
Right. I think, like I said, I think he's a 4 or 5. I don't think he's a 3-4. I think saying he could be a third best defenseman on your team, on a good team, I don't think I would want him as my third best defenseman. That's all I'm saying, and why I don't think he's a 3. I would be comfortable having 3 guys who are a little bit better, a little bit more well-rounded than Josh Manson is. I think he's a good player to have, and when paired with the right guy on a good team, he can be a valuable piece. We've seen it. We've seen how valuable Josh Manson can be on a competitive Ducks team when he's placed with the right guy. That's why I think when you were saying earlier, his trade value could be enticing to certain teams because they know that. They've seen that. They know what he brings to the game, and he's a right shot defenseman, so his value is already high there. I think there would be teams who'd be interested. And at that point, I think if the Ducks, again, can only protect 3 defensemen, you would assume Fowler and Lindholm, not untouchable, but are guys that they would like to keep. So then you have Gooley, Manson, and Mahura as potential guys who are exposed at the deadline. I think Josh Manson is a guy, not only because of his age, but also right shot, he might get a bit more value, and one that the Ducks should be looking to move. I don't think you want to move Josh Mahura right now, and I don't think they're ready to cash in and say Brendan Gooley's a bust. It's way too early for that. It leaves me with one obvious option, and that's Josh Manson.
So the defenseman with the highest expected goals for on the Ducks over the from not counting this season, from 2016 to the end of 2019 was Hampus Lindholm. Still is.
Yeah.
He's been the Ducks' best defenseman. He hasn't gotten the fair share of offensive zone starts. He has more defensive zone starts than offensive zone starts. Same with Manson. They get the hard matchups, like you said. Cam Fowler's a bit more even between offensive zone and defensive zone starts, so that matters. I know it's a bunch of analytic, mumbo jumbo, I guess you could say, for lack of a better word there, but it is what it is. You're going to get more opportunities to be effective offensively if you're starting with the puck, in the offensive zone. So this season, though, looking at it as to where we can try to move and gain assets from, I think we're spot on, man. Not too many times am I pretty happy about our picks with things. I'm like, oh great, I'm going to say something and then it's not going to be correct. But those guys are the guys that Ducks really, really need to look to move. And Ducks fans need to get comfortable with the idea that this team is not going to be something that's resurrected by Trevor Zegras. It's just he's not. He's not going to come here and be Connor McDavid. You don't know that. We don't know any of that. So you can't rely on that kid. I mean, we were all talking about it.
The kids this year, all the kids this
year.
year. That was the
Andre
big thing.
Kasha this year.
Yeah, if the
Kasha
kids and Andre Kasha
guy
lived up to the lofty expectations from fans, the Ducks would be a playoff team right now. But that just doesn't happen. And to think that could happen next year and adding Trevor Zegras to that mix potentially is just everything's just gonna all be right now, and the Ducks are gonna go from a almost dead last goal scoring team to a capable team when it comes to putting the puck in the back of the net. That's a stretch to say that. And I think when you have assets at the highest value they could possibly get to, you have to actively try and ship those if you're in a rebuild. And I think the Ducks are in a rebuild. I think when we look at what they have coming up in the system for elite talent to move this to the next level. John Gibson, I think, is the only untouchable on this team because he's young enough that when the Ducks are competitive again, hopefully that he's still in his prime and is still one of the best goaltenders in the league. Yeah, he's having a down year, but I think he's the only guy you don't touch and you don't try to move or at least listen to offers for. That's the only guy. I think right now, Silfverberg, you should move him. I think he can be a valuable piece for the Ducks if they're competitive. I just don't think by the time they're competitive again, he'll be as effective as he is now, and you'll be wishing you got the potential late first-round pick and prospect for him that could move this rebuild in a better direction. You can accelerate it a little bit by potentially hitting on that late first-round pick or getting a prospect that can help you in a position in need, like a goal-scoring winger or a right-shot defenseman. One team I mentioned, and Pittsburgh fans jumped on me for this, was Pittsburgh Penguins potentially being a good fit for Jakob Silfverberg. I think especially now with Jake Gensel down for the rest of the year, they're not only looking for a guy who can score, but a good two-way player. And they have exactly the type of prospect the Ducks need right now in a right-shot offensive defenseman, a Kalen Addison, who's playing for Canada at the World Juniors. And then maybe throw in a late first-round pick from Pittsburgh. I don't know if Silfverberg is going to get you the first and Kalen Addison, but that's the type of return I would look for Jakob Silfverberg. I think if you can get a first and a prospect, you take that and run now. And you go to the bank with that, and you have an extra draft pick and a prospect to accelerate.
You think Sylvie's going to get a first-round pick?
I 100% I think he's going to get a first-round pick. I think the fact he's an all-star, he's on pace for 30 goals, and everybody already knows his two-way defensive capability. That is highly attractive to any team trying to be a contender in the playoffs. I think he is more valuable than a player who's going to score 25 goals or 30 goals, and that's it. Silfverberg has that value as a known two-way player, a guy who's defensively responsible. You're not going to have any issues. Like somebody tweeted out, I don't remember who it was, but there's nothing wrong with Silfverberg's game. Doesn't do anything amazing, but he does everything good. That is the perfect player to get at the deadline. You have no issues. No matter what, you're going to be fine. I mean, maybe he doesn't score up to the level you want him to, but he's not going to be a detriment to your team. Like he's still.
If he was a center and this effective, you'd be talking about him in almost the same light as the elite centers in this league for defensive play.
Yeah.
He doesn't have that center responsibility. Yeah, if he was a center,
30 goals. There's not too many of those guys.
Yeah, you're talking about Mark Stone, who's the cream of the crop of that. And I'm not comparing the two, but Silfverberg's damn good, and he's probably that second tier player when it comes to two-way guys in this league. What about trading a guy like Ondrej Kase? What do you think about that? Eric Stevens had mentioned it in the article in The Athletic when they were talking about players the Ducks and Kings should trade. He makes a good point. The rumor was that Bob Murray already tried to get Justin Falk with Ondrej Kase. Do you think that that's a move the Ducks would revisit? Not for Falk, obviously, but in moving Kase. Kase hasn't had this amazing year that people predicted he was going to explode, including us.
Yeah, I wanted that move to happen at the time. I'm kind of glad it didn't now, because looking at how bad the Ducks are this year, I don't think Justin Falk would have magically turned that around. I think it would have made things better, but I don't think all of a sudden the Ducks were going to be a much better team with him.
He's better than Eric DeBranson, though.
He is, for sure. But thinking of what you could potentially get otherwise for Ondrej Kase if teams were interested, whether it be picks or prospects, I think that's more valuable to the Ducks right now. I think the first thing they should be looking for is draft picks, especially for this year, and the second thing is prospects. I don't think they should be looking at roster players at all unless they are younger roster players that are controlled for more than 1 year, which is typical from Bob Murray, what he's going to look for. But I think Ondrej Kase falls into that mix. I think him and Rickard Rakell are guys that you listen to offers for, and you make the move if it makes sense, because they're on such team-friendly deals, especially Rickard Rakell. I mean, he's making less than $4 million. That's enticing. It's very close for me as the most enticing player on this team between Silfverberg and Rakell, but I think because of Rakell's contract, he has to be the most valuable trade piece the Ducks have at this point, obviously beyond John Gibson. So I think Ondrej Kase and Rakell are guys that, you don't rule it out, but I don't think you actively shop them. Especially Ondrej Kase right now, because the injuries have been an issue this year. No concussions, but injuries. And the injuries are a thing that is well known. Concussions, he's had a few. I think he's had 3 or 4 now. That's going to create issues for a lot of teams that are like, hey, if we give up a lot for this guy and he gets one more concussion, he's done. So I think that's going to be concerning for some teams. But on the topic of Rickard Rakell, I think that's one you definitely at least listen to offers for. I mean, I think Rickard Rakell is one you want to keep. I think he's a valuable player, and I think by the time the Ducks are competitive again, Rickard Rakell is only going to be 29, 30, 31. So at that point, I still think he can be an effective player. But if somebody comes to you and just wows you with an offer, and it's picks and prospects, and it can kind of start you in the right direction of a full rebuild, I think you at least have to explore it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you have to for all those guys. I don't think the young kids though should be anywhere for conversation. I'm not trading. If I'm Bob Murray, I'm not trading Maxime Comtois. I'm not trading Max Jones. I'm not trading Troy Terry. I'm not trading Sam Steele. Those are guys that, and they're not going to, right? But they definitely need to explore the guys that are in that tier that is not going to be here when the team's great in their prime.
Yeah.
That's what the Ducks should be focusing on. You're right. And they need to be going after picks, and they need to be going after prospects. Where do you think the best deal would land right now? What teams would you be talking to?
I'd be talking to all those teams that are right on the cusp, right? Or teams that have injuries. So I mentioned the Pittsburgh Penguins. They are 4th place in the Eastern Conference right now. And I always kind of throw them in there because the Ducks and Penguins make a lot of deals. So even if they were first, I'd still throw them in there. But now with that Jake Gensel injury, I'd almost be comfortable betting money that the Penguins are going to add some forward at the deadline. They're good enough this year. They're 24-11-5 without Sidney Crosby for most of that time. And they've got Brian Rust, who's just playing out of his mind with Evgeny Malkin. And
did Gensel just get hurt too?
That's what I'm saying. That's why I would bet money that they'll add a forward is because Gensel's out for 4 to 6 months. Like, he is out. If he comes back, it's playoffs. Like, he's out for the rest of the season. So they'll add somebody. I'd have to think they would add somebody. They always do. And the Penguins aren't shy about trading away their prospects. Like, they rarely bring prospects up through the system because they trade them away or trade their first-round picks away to get players to be competitive. I mean, it's worked out for them. Doesn't work out for every team, but it seems to be the strategy for the Penguins no matter who they have in management there. So I think that is a target, especially for a player like maybe Rickard Rakell for cap strengths or Jakob Silfverberg, just because I think he's kind of the perfect fit for a team like the Penguins. I think he fits perfectly either with Malkin or with Sidney Crosby. I think he'd be a highly effective player with either of those guys being able to dish him the puck. But then I think you look at teams like Carolina, who the Ducks were exploring Andre Kasha with before. Maybe you go back there with Kasha. Maybe they wow you with an offer for Raquel, or maybe they look at somebody else. I think they're definitely an option. And then the teams around them, I think Philadelphia, because they're kind of right in the mix, they might go. I think Florida's all in this year, so I think they're a team that could be looking for some supplemental scoring. Maybe Columbus, if they decide they want to make a push this year. And then out west, I think it gets a little bit murky because I don't think you want to move some of these quality players out to the Pacific Division. So maybe you look at Winnipeg or Dallas. But I would have to bet if you're moving a big piece like Silfverberg or Raquel or Kasha, I think Bob Murray's looking out east. And I think there's some really good suitors out there that the Ducks could get some, either a late first-round pick or some decent prospects back.
I wish they would have went out and got Ilya Kovalchuk before the Habs did.
Yeah, nice one. I
mean, that's like the Danny Heatley of moves this year.
I'll say that's not a bad move for the Habs. It's
$700K for 3 goals. Nice. You see what happens.
Two-way deal,
we'll see how it goes.
$700K literally doesn't hurt you, and you have the potential for this guy to come in and do something, and maybe he fits. If he doesn't fit, he is a two-way deal. You can send him down to the AHL, and then he terminates his contract and probably goes back to Russia. There's literally no downside to the Habs doing that. Now, obviously, I don't think the Ducks should have got Ilya Kovalchuk. They're not in the position to, and I'm sure that's not the type of team that he would have wanted to go to. I'd have to think that there wasn't a ton of suitors for Ilya Kovalchuk, that he decided on a team that's not even in the playoff picture right now in the Montreal Canadiens. There couldn't have been too many teams that wanted to bring that in and bring a player like that in the way things went with him and the LA Kings. I think Montreal is just above 500 right now. They're like 7 or 8 points out of a playoff spot. And the rumor was Kovalchuk was looking for a competitive playoff team, so he didn't quite get that. But I don't think it's a bad move. I don't think it's a bad move for the Habs.
What about a defenseman to Winnipeg, and somehow we get Nikolai Ehlers out of it? Wouldn't that be amazing?
We've talked about Nikolai Ehlers so much. And
I know, man. He's a 23-year-old left wing that's he's on pace for 30 goals this season. So.
Would you do this? Would you do Josh Manson and Andre Kasha for Nikolai Ehlers?
Oh my God. Yes, I would. I don't think Winnipeg
would. I think I would. No, probably not. And
Winnipeg's not going to eat that much salary.
Nikolai Ehlers makes about $6 million.
About the same.
It's about the same.
True.
Yeah. I think Josh Manson makes what, 4 or 5?
Yeah, it makes 4 point something.
And then Cash is about 2, and then Nikolai Ehlers makes over 6. So the salary cap works there, and I think it's a deal that makes sense for both teams. I think, if you're Winnipeg, you get back an effective top 9 player that can't replace what Ehlers brings, but can at least be, he's competent offensively, and you're hoping again for the same thing we talked about with Manson, the change of scenery thing, and that maybe things turn around at that point. And then obviously it's been well broadcasted this year, the Jets' defensive issues with Byfuglien sitting out for the year and then trading Trouba and trading Myers. That's 3 right shot defensemen that you lost that you had last year. So I think there's a fit there. Whether Winnipeg does it or not, that's the question. I think they've been, just like I said with Rickard Rakell, I think they've been listening to offers for Nikolai Ehlers for the last couple seasons, but nothing is kind of wowed them yet. Whether that wows them or not, it's completely up to Kevin Cheveldayoff in the Jets.
Let me ask our chat, because we have some people chiming in here. Dave and Brett, what would make that deal realistic for Winnipeg? What would you guys throw it in chat? If you're listening right now and you have your chat up, what would you trade realistically for Nikolai Ehlers that makes sense for the Winnipeg Jets? They don't have any defensemen, if you guys don't already know. Like Eddy just said, I don't know if they would bite on Josh Manson. I think they would probably want a young defenseman and Josh Manson and another piece. I think they'd be very greedy about it. I don't think they're going to turn. They're going to turn and get an injury-prone winger, even though he's the same age as Ehlers and Andre Kasha. Josh Manson, who's having a bad couple of seasons, would be tough. Also, they might want like a kid like Josh Maher to be tossed in there as well.
You could say that, but then I will list off the Winnipeg Jets defense right now, and you tell me if the Ducks don't have some sort of leverage here, because there's no way the Jets are going to roll into the playoffs with this group of 6. So the top 2 I'm fine with. Josh Morrissey, I think, is a very great player. Neil Pionk's been a good pickup for the Winnipeg Jets when they brought him over from the New York Rangers. Those are 2 good guys. Those are 2 top 4 guys. After that, it's a complete nightmare. You've got Lukas Spiza, Tucker Poolman,
all-time Duck great.
I think he's a right shot defenseman. I'm not sure. Carl Dahlstrom, who's jumped between Arizona, Chicago, the AHL, and Anthony Botetto, who I think last was in Nashville, and he was a guy that was between the AHL and the NHL there. And then obviously on the injury list, Byfuglien, because he is presumably not playing this year. And they've got Dmitry Kulikov and Nathan Beaulieu. Again, so nothing great there. If you throw Josh Manson into this mix, he's their 3rd best defenseman. There is some leverage there, I think, for the Ducks, where they say, if Winnipeg is actively shopping for a defenseman, Josh Manson, a right shot defenseman, fits what they're looking for, might be one of the best available at the deadline when it comes to right shot defensemen or just quality players on the blue line. That is a place I think the Ducks and Jets could find some common ground, and then obviously throwing in maybe Andre Kasha gets that to work. There might be something you have to throw in to sweeten the pot a bit, but I don't think it would be much. Like I don't think that's far off. I mean, you think Josh Manson's a 3-4, right? A top 4 defenseman and a top 9 winger with potential to be better, just has some injury concerns, for a second line winger in Nikolai Ehlers, because a 60-point player is a second line winger. I don't think Nikolai Ehlers is an out and out first line player. He plays second line for the Jets. I don't think it's that far off from being a deal that makes sense for both teams.
Do you know what would make Winnipeg bite on this really fast? Would be Rickard Rakell, Josh Manson for Nikolai Ehlers.
Well, I wouldn't do that, because I think Rickard
but that's
Rakell
what they would do.
If you're the Ducks, you don't do that, because Rickard
You're getting a
Rakell's
younger,
2 years older than Nikolai Ehlers.
3 years older. You're getting a younger, faster player in Nikolai Ehlers with the same finishing ability, passing ability. I would do that. I really would. Make this team younger. This kid's put up 32 points in 41 games. And, in chat, they're saying they don't think Manson's good enough to be there for that. But like you just said, there's something to be said about a team that's been bleeding chances on Connor Hellebuck. Connor Hellebuck's been carrying this team defensively. Really, really has. He's wearing the John Gibson cape, to be honest with you. They haven't looked good on the blue line, and that's clear. I think they could definitely use Josh Manson on that blue line, but I think they're going to want a guy that they're going to have to build.
Josh Manson, Andre Kasha, Ryan Miller.
That's another little chip there too. Dang,
Laurent
dude.
Brossoit has not been good for them in that this year. Obviously, Connor Hellebuck has been elite, but you throw in...
They would definitely be interested in Ryan Miller.
It's not even like Ryan Miller is a big piece,
but
but again, you're leveraging the weaknesses from other teams and saying, hey, like, look at your defense, look at your backup goaltending. Andre Kasha can slide right into your top six. He doesn't supplement the loss from Nikolai Ehlers, but you're getting a top four defenseman. You're getting a suitable backup goaltender to go into the playoffs and be a more well-rounded team than just having two lines. In Nikolai. And I think they can supplement that loss. I think, you look at their top line, it's Scheifele, Connor, and Laine. That's not going anywhere. That's their number one line.
No.
And then you've got Blake Wheeler right now with Ehlers and Roslovic. If you just have Blake Wheeler with Roslovic and Andre Kasha, then you've on the fourth line they've got Lowry, Perreault, and Bork. Like that's not awful. And I think they're a better team if they make that deal. Whether they want to or not, I'm not sure. And they get Brian Little back at some point, so that supplements the loss of Nikolai Ehlers a bit too. There's possibility there. I think we've talked about Nikolai Ehlers for a long time. I think there's a possibility for a deal there, but whether both teams work it out, that remains to be seen. None of the blockbuster deals we ever discuss ever come to fruition anyway. So
no, but I do feel that I don't know, man. I really feel like if you throw Rickard Rakell on there, that seals the deal.
I can't. I don't see that happening. 3 years isn't enough for me to. I think Josh Manson and Rickard Rakell for Nikolai Ehlers, the Ducks are losing big time on that. I think I would just rather keep Rickard Rakell. I think the production between Rakell and Ehlers in a good team is the same. I think they're both 50 to 60 point players. I think if you plug Rickard Rakell into where Nikolai Ehlers is playing with Blake Wheeler, similar production this year. And I think if you start with Nikolai Ehlers for the beginning of the year, playing with Silfverberg between Adam Henrique, I think Nikolai Ehlers has about the same amount of points that Rickard Rakell has right now. I think they are very similar in that sense that you are not getting a big upgrade or big downgrade. I think that would almost
you're
be
getting
a hockey deal.
term. You're getting 3 years.
That would be a hockey deal. That would be a hockey deal
years.
if you're Winnipeg, you want to save cap. I can see a 1-for-1 of Rickard Rakell for Nikolai Ehlers. I don't see why you would ever add Josh Manson in that if you're the Ducks, unless you're just trying to dump Josh Manson. But I think there would be teams legitimately interested in picking up Josh Manson.
Point. You make a good point. I think the right move, you're right. I think the right move is definitely Andre Kasha then. That makes a good point. Kasha, right. Manson. We got to move on from this.
To sum this up, if you're the Ducks, you could pick a list of 3 guys in order of obviously the guy you think they should trade the most. Who are your 3 guys? Number 1 is the guy that you trade the most. Number 2 right after number 3 in that order.
1, 2, 3. I would trade Jakob Silfverberg first due to his age. He's peaking right now this season. He's the all-star, like you had mentioned. He's on pace for 30, which Brett likes to rub in your face, so it's great. I would trade him first. I would look for somebody for Josh Manson second. And I would definitely explore options for Andre Kasha. Definitely.
Yeah. Yeah, I think right now if I'm the Ducks, what I'm doing is again, Silfverberg's my number 1. I think you have to trade him at this deadline. You have to. His value likely is never going to get higher. Silfverberg's probably not going to be a perennial all-star, even if he stays with the Ducks. We've talked about his 30-goal potential for the last 5 or 6 years, and he's never got there. He's on pace for it this year, but he's on pace for just 30. So you can use that as well. And then obviously the fact that he is under contract can be either enticing or detriment in a deal depending on which team you're dealing with, right? He's locked for I think 4 or 5 more years. Some teams will like that. Some teams won't. So I just think you have to. You have to go and trade Jakob Silfverberg now. I think Josh Manson is my second guy because I think you got to move one of those 3 now before you get closer to the expansion draft, because otherwise you're losing Mahura or Gouli for nothing at that expansion draft, or you're trading Josh Manson for peanuts in comparison to what you could get from him. I don't think it's when you actively shop, because I don't want to trade him for nothing now, and his value is probably lower than it could be in a better year for him. But I think he would be second on my list of a guy you're looking for. And then after that, I go back to forward. and it would be one of Henrique, Raquel, or Kasha, just to round out and have those 7 forwards. That
Henrique's tough to trade, man. He's at that age gap
He is.
and he's also on a long-term deal. Lots of money tied up in Adam Henrique.
Yeah, he's the toughest one, I think, to move. He'd be the one I would opt to move over Raquel and Kasha, just because I think when the Ducks are good again, that Kasha and Raquel could be valuable pieces of this team. But he is tough. I think the upside is he's a second-line center. If a team needs either a second line or a very good third-line center, I think he's enticing in that way. But the contract and the length of it is going to turn some teams off. But obviously, like I said, the biggest trade piece the Ducks have and the most enticing one is Rickard Raquel at that contract. And if you get blown away by a ridiculous offer for him at the deadline, you should probably take it. As much as I love Rickard Raquel, as much as I think he can be a consistent 25 to 30 goal scorer, 50 to 60 point guy, you gotta take it if it's worth it.
Ehlers in a second for Rax and Josh Manson. How do you feel about that?
No.
Still not biting on that, Brett. Still not biting on it.
I would you trade Josh Manson for a second round pick?
Maybe. I'd consider it.
Then if you trade Josh Manson for a second round pick, then fine. Because I said Rax for Ehlers I think is a good hockey trade. I think I could see that happening. So then it comes down to what's Josh Manson's worth then. If he's worth more than a second round pick, then no. If you think he's worth a second
Is he getting a first round
pick,
pick out of Josh Manson? Probably not.
But it's a late first. If it's
Maybe.
a late first, then potentially. So I could see it.
I like what Shane said. Shane said Ehlers for Ryan Miller, Josh Manson has split custody of Teemu Solani's fandom. That's good.
Fair enough. Yeah. Obviously, that split custody for Teemu's fandom is worth a lot. So.
Oh no, it definitely is, man. Interesting. Can we shift gears here? I want to talk about the article about the best Ducks. Have you seen that Jordan Samuels Thomas article?
Oh, the analytics article. Yeah.
Yeah. I thought that was really, really good. I mean, he basically said that the best players on the Ducks this season analytically, and probably to the eye test. I mean, I know that not everyone loves analytics, but to the eye test, Jason would not love this article because it's analytics based. But Ryan Getzlaf, Rickard Raquel, Jakob Silfverberg, Adam Henrique, and Cam Fowler rated as the Ducks' best players 41, 42 games in, right? Are we have 41 or 42 now? I forget.
41.
So the exact halfway.
Yeah.
Yeah,
no,
and
I
there's
would agree
no
with that.
question. That's pretty much it.
Yeah, I think Silfverberg's the best player. I think Rickard Raquel and Getzlaf are a close tie for second. And then I would say Adam Henrique's the 4th best forward the Ducks have this year. And then Cam Fowler's been the best defenseman. And probably their second best player this year. Behind Jakob Silfverberg, I think Cam Fowler, just the way he's been playing and the way he's upped his game. So I have no arguments with that. I think everybody, even with the eye test, would see that those have been the Ducks' 4 best players there. You could maybe argue swapping out Adam Henrique for somebody else because the consistency hasn't necessarily been there, but I don't even know who you would put in at that point, right? Like, it's not like anybody else has really been playing at a high level. I'm sure there would some people saying Derek Grant or something along those lines, but I think Adam Henrique deserves that 4 spot, but it's definitely been Getzlaf, Raquel, Silfverberg, and Fowler are easily the Ducks' top 4 players this year. They've all seen improvement, and I think Getzlaf maybe not seen improvement, but just looked more comfortable and at home this year than he did last year.
Just a quick note, Eric Stevens just tweeted out that Daniel Sprong and Kiefer Sherwood are up from the AHL San Diego, practicing with the Ducks now ahead of Sunday's home game against Nashville. Andre Kasha and Rickard Raquel not on the ice. Rickard Raquel still out with upper body injury. No word as to why Andre Kasha is not on the ice. So interesting. Is he being traded before Sunday, Ed?
Cue the trade rumors. I think the only guy working the phones right now is Mark Bergevin, because right when that roster freeze ended, he made like 3 trades and a free agent signing. So he was obviously working something. Who did he ship out? He brought in Mark Scandella, shipped out Mike Riley, signed Ilya Kovalchuk. And then the Sabres brought in Michael Frolik yesterday.
That's
I hope it's not an injury for Andre Kasha. I don't know
it's
what
a trade.
It is.
I really do hope it's a trade. It'd be interesting.
It could just be a simple rest day for him. You never know, right?
Yeah.
Or he could be getting healthy scratched. I mean, anything's a possibility.
Elliot Seifert said he's trying to reach out to figure out why. So maybe we'll get an update from Elliot there.
We're social media. We're in that time of day where that era where a guy misses practice at this time of year in January or February.
He's being traded.
And he's being traded. He's being traded.
As Mike Commodore would say, pack your shit.
Well, to be fair, it can happen. Mark Scandella missed training for the Habs yesterday and was traded. So it could be possible. I'd be interested to see where and what for at this point, because Kasha has not had a good year. I don't think you sell low on Andre Kasha. You can't. He still has another year left on that contract.
Bet on his potential. Bet on the potential.
And even if he plays bad next year too, just re-sign him and hope eventually he gets to that point. Like, if you're getting a third-round pick for Andre Kasha, just keep him. Just keep him at this point. Just keep him and hope he figures things out. If he doesn't, then you wasted a 7th-round pick to draft him to begin with. So it's not like it's Nick Ritchie where you wasted a 10th overall pick. Like, the expectations for Andre Kasha, when you look from the outside looking in, are low. 7th-round pick, generally those guys don't even get anywhere close to the NHL. And the fact that Andre Kasha is producing at any level right now is impressive. I just think because we have these expectations because of his underlying numbers and the way he plays and how good he's been for the last 2 years before this year, there's those heavy expectations for Andre Kasha to produce. But we all have to sit back and remember this guy was a 7th-round pick. Like, the fact he's even here is impressive at all. The fact he even can scrape into the top 6 is impressive.
So let's take the time real quick right now. If you're listening to the show or you're actually watching it on Twitch, you're watching us live, thanks for tuning in. If you're new and you're watching us on Twitch, welcome as well. We do this for every single one of our shows. Almost, I would say 99% of the time we're on Twitch. A couple occasions where there's some issues we're not able to be on Twitch, but most of the time is where we're at. If you want to help out the show and not have it cost you anything, there's an opportunity for that too. It helps us out. You can get a subscription to us. If you have Amazon Prime, it's $4.99, but Amazon Prime lets you subscribe to one Twitch viewer a month, and it resets every month. But it sends the $4.99 our way. And it's free to you. There's no charge there. You get one gift subscription a month with Amazon Prime. That's a way to help the show. Another way to do it, too, would be to go to our Patreon, which is patreon.com/PuckGuysForeverMighty. To get our Patreon there, where we're able to get some shows extra every single month. So those are 2 really nice ways to help us out, and we really appreciate it. So yeah, if you have Amazon Prime and if you want to have a free way to help us out, that's the best way to do it here on Twitch. Thank you guys for tuning in. I just wanted to toss that in there. I don't think we ever really talk about that because I think just this season we got to the point with our Twitch channel where we're able to accept those, right?
Sorry?
I think it's just we haven't brought that up because this is the first time this is like we've had Twitch for almost a year and we finally hit that threshold where we're able to get gift subscriptions where people are able to freely give us money through Amazon Prime, which is nice.
Well, I know Brett has been since we've got it set up. He's always been on it, and I believe we have another one. I think we have 2. I think
Dave too. Yeah. So if you can't, totally understandable. If you do, it's awesome. Well, they're both also Patreon users. Careful, Eddy.
So fair enough. Both ways.
Where do you want to go, man? Do you want to go to questions? I know we have quite a bit on Instagram we could get to.
Let's just see if I think there's a couple things we had to clean house for. Obviously, Silfverberg named to the All-Star game.
Oh, yeah, we got a couple things there. Yeah.
Yeah, just these quick couple things. Silfverberg named to the All-Star game, obviously. Clear choice. Anybody else you would have picked for that, or was Silfverberg your guy?
I think he's the obvious choice because he's scoring, and that's what they want at the All-Star game for sure. The only other guy that I would say give a shot to would be, Ryan Getzlaf. I know that's been floated around as well.
I would have leaned for Cam because the only defenseman for the Pacific Division going right now, I think, is Drew Doughty.
Wow.
Just one defenseman going. Quinn Hughes is up for the...
Why is Quinn Hughes not going? Is it just because Marcus Pettersson... Or not Marcus Pettersson, good lord. Elias Pettersson's going?
Yeah, that and because the NHL is dumb and you have to send one player from each team. Quinn Hughes should go over back of Silfverberg.
Can we just end the All-Star game, not have it anymore? We talked about this on the Patreon show the other day.
But Fowler would have been probably my second pick, and then Rickard Rakell, and then maybe Ryan Getzlaf after that. Last men in, also the dumbest thing ever because it's a popularity
contest.
Because I know not that Quinn Hughes doesn't deserve it. Because he'll probably win it because it's a popularity contest. He's a rookie and it's Vancouver fans, so they're going to vote him in. But I think Max Pacioretty should win that, but he probably won't. But Vegas fans could get behind him. But he has 41 points in 43 games. He should be on the All-Star roster anyway. Like Silfverberg has 27 points, 26 or 25 when he was nominated and named the All-Star game. Pacioretty almost has double. That's when you start looking at this and saying this format is dumb. And of course, I'm happy for Silfverberg, and I want to see him at the All-Star game, and I want to see Ducks players at the All-Star game. But if a player doesn't deserve to go, and we're talking about All-Star being the best players, Pacioretty should be there, Quinn Hughes should be there. So some of the guys that were named to it probably shouldn't be there. Every team definitely shouldn't have a representative. Who's going for San Jose? Because I don't even think anybody should go from San Jose. Oh, it's Couture. Couture has 33 points. Pacioretty should be in there over Couture too. So I just
Pacioretty's having a hell of a year for Vegas.
Yep, and I think it was Fleury or Mark Stone got in for them. I don't even think Mark Stone got in. I don't even know. I'm not even paying attention to it. But anyway, Corey Perry, former Duck, obviously suspended for 5 games for that hit that we talked about on our Patreon show at the Winter Classic. Ejected out of the game after, I think, 2 minutes or minute and a half.
I don't understand this league. It's
How many
the
did you
dumbest
say?
league.
How many games did you say he was going to get on the Patreon show? I said
3 to 5. 3 to 5.
You were right on. I said 2 to 3.
Yeah, but dumb. It's the dumbest league. This is the stupidest league. What are they doing with this crap? Like, you see hits all the time to the head, and they get punished less. I don't understand. I'm not defending Corey Perry. Just the inconsistency is so
fact
dumb.
that gets 5 and a blatant intent to injure will get 2 or 3 depending on the player.
It's unbelievable to me, man. I don't get it. The second that came down, Jimmy hit me up and he was like, "You have to wait till April to boo him." I told him I'm going to go to that game and I'm going to boo Corey Perry when he touches the puck, just to piss people off in the arena. It'd be great.
You might get punched.
That's all.
Will Jr. is still going on, but both Ducks prospects are out.
The only reason we're talking about this is so you can rub in Canada being up over Finland. Shut up.
I think they're up 4-0 right now. So,
God.
But Trevor Zegras and the U.S. lost 1-0 to Finland in the quarterfinal match. Zegras was my best player of the tournament. Won't go down as that because he only played 5 games, and some players are going to surpass him. But 9 primary assists in technically 4 games because they went scoreless in that 5th game against Finland. Unbelievable tournament from him, and they were all beautiful, and a few of them were ridiculous. Like this first one, he pulled the puck between his legs and put it off over to Arthur Kaliev. Another one was a no-look bullet pass across the ice. One was a spinorama pass to Jack Drury. This is the performance. If you're a Ducks fan, you couldn't ask for anything more. Maybe a goal because he only had 9. He had 9 assists and 0 goals. But
City loves assists too.
Yeah, you really couldn't ask for much more from Trevor Zegras if you want to build some hype and be excited about something this year, because he was clearly the U.S.'s best player, and they have some excellent players on that roster. Cole Caulfield was non-existent at this tournament, and there's big hype over him being, an elite goal scorer. Not to say he's not going to be, but he didn't perform at the tournament. The LA Kings pick, 4 picks in front of Trevor Zegras, Alex Turcotte, played more of a two-way role in the tournament, but don't want to say he was non-existent, but didn't notice him as much. Trevor Zegras was getting national attention from everywhere. And that's nothing but good news for the Ducks to see him play. When we talked to Steve Corniano before the draft last year, and he said there was potential that Trevor Zegras could be the 3rd best player from this draft when all said and done after Capo Caco and Jack Hughes.
Maybe the best playmaker in this draft.
Yeah. And we saw that on display. And he could go back next year, too. He did this as an 18-year-old. He could go back next year as a 19-year-old. If the Ducks allow him or whatever, and just completely tear it up.
This doesn't mean anything in the grand scheme of things, right? It's amazing. He's doing great. I'm not trying to throw shade on the World Juniors. They are.
And when it comes to evaluating
it's a
prospects.
showcase. Exactly.
Which I hate. I love this tournament, and I hate it at the same time. Because the top 2 picks for this year, Alexis Lafreniere and Quentin Byfield, are both there for Canada. Lafreniere is killing it. Quentin Byfield, who's a full 7 or 8 months younger, has no points, and people are already jumping him down to 4th or 5th in the draft because of this. If you judge players on this tournament as for the draft or whatever for potential, then it's ridiculous. 5-game mini tournament, and you're going to say this guy's good or this guy's bad. It's great to see Trevor Zegras do well, like you said, but you can't base everything off one tournament.
You can't say that's going to turn into an AHL superstar into a top tier, upper echelon performer in the NHL. Each step, you talk to any player that's played in these and then played in the AHL and then has also played in either college and the NHL. It's like each step is just significantly larger. The mistakes from each level are like they have much more of an impact, and the game's much tighter as he gets better, obviously. So it's awesome to watch. I think it's amazing. I think he looked great. It's awesome that the Ducks can be excited about him and us Ducks fans can be excited about it. We need it. The real question is we'll see how it translates. It looks good right now, which is awesome. Do you think we see him, by the way, at the end of the season?
Yeah, I think so. I don't think Boston University is good enough to go that far that they'll be playing by the time the Ducks season is over. I think he'll get a few games with the Ducks this year. I don't think he goes back to BU next year. I think he gets a shot to make the team at the beginning of next year. I think he has been that good where the Ducks just can't ignore it. He's over a point per game in the NCAA, which only 4 freshmen are. Again, lit it up at the World Juniors. He's just keeps showing that he's too good to not be up there. The only thing I'm worried about is, can that translate, right? Can you do that when you have less room and less pressure and you're playing against bigger guys and everything's tighter in the NHL? Can he do those things? Because not many guys can do those things in the NHL. Only the elite players in this game can do those things in the NHL. Spinorama passes and no-look passes and between the legs moves. And, for BU this year, he's attempted at least 10 between the legs passes and shots this year. Like, he's a very creative player, but will that translate, and can he do the little things? I think he can, but that's the only, I think, worrying thing at this point, because he is an elite level player when it comes to hockey IQ and creativity, but that is a hard thing to project from this level and from the NCAA level to the NHL level.
Well, people much smarter than us with hockey would say that he has a really good chance of hitting that. For sure. Let's talk about.
Wait, we forgot Lukas Dostal. I have to just mention him because.
Okay, I didn't want to talk about the World Juniors anymore because I know the last thing you're going to say is, I got one more thing. Canada.
No, I'm not going to mention that, but we do have to talk about Lukas Dostal because he was the other Ducks prospect.
Not a good tournament.
No, battling an illness, missed a couple games. The Czechs lost their top 3 players. He finished with like an .878 save percentage and above 4 goals against average. But they were playing in a group of death with Russia, Canada, the U.S., and then obviously Germany as well. And I forget who they played in the I think they played Sweden in the quarterfinals. So 4 of their 5 matches against the 4 best teams in this tournament. It's going to be tough to replicate what he did last year. So, again, another reason why you don't judge everything based off one tournament. I mean, Lukas Dostal has been dominant in Finland this year in Liga. He's going to go back there and probably play extremely well. And you look at 3 games or 4 games for him at this tournament, you can't judge him based off that.
No, you can't. We said the same thing about Trevor Zegras. He's having an amazing one, but you can't judge how good he's going to be anywhere else based off a junior tournament.
All right, what do we got left here? We already kind of talked about John Gibson's comments after that Vegas loss, right?
Pretty much. I think we're off to questions, Ed.
Okay, let's. You got any questions pulled up here?
Well, let's see if anyone's got any in chat. If not, I'm able to pull some up here on Instagram. We didn't have any on Twitter.
I got the ones up on Instagram. So, first one from HRV7469, I think. Should we start making trades in hopes of getting better?
No, not in the short term. These should be long term,
right?
Long term deals, right? These should be long term deals.
If you mean better, if better is getting picks and prospects to be good later, yes. If better is making trading younger players to bring in older guys or rentals, then no. I think you get, if you're at the Ducks right now, you get better by getting worse. Like, that's the only way you get better. It sounds dumb, but you get better by getting worse.
Get a top 3 pick this season, boys.
Yeah.
We got to start looking at that. There's no playoffs in this team's future this year.
Yeah, no hockey trades unless you're bringing in, like we said, Nikolai Ehlers, a young player.
Please.
Picks and prospects for the Ducks this year for some of their top players, especially Jakob Silfverberg. I think that has to happen.
That would make my season if the Ducks went out and got Nikolai Ehlers.
It would make my season. It would make me a lot happier. Now, obviously, I would love that. Depends on what they give up for him. If the Ducks went out and all they did at the deadline was trade Jakob Silfverberg, got a first-round pick and a decent prospect, I would be happy. I would be happy because that is the most you'll ever get for Jakob Silfverberg, and I'd be extremely happy with that. Obviously, if they went out and got Ehlers, it all depends on what they give up for him or whoever they end up getting, right? So that's the big thing for me. Next question from the same guy. Along the same lines, do you see this team getting better in the second half of the season?
I unfortunately do not have high hopes for the rest of the season. I think that the changes that they're going to be making are bringing in prospects and picks. I would love, like we just said, to see Nikolai Ehlers. I don't see that type of player coming in. I'd be very pleasantly surprised. But I think that we're not going to be adding value to this team to get better and try to scrape into the playoffs. I don't think that's happening this season.
No, I don't want to write it off, because I think if the goaltending all of a sudden just magically got back to the level it was last year, then they would be better, right? They'd be
the smart
games.
thing to do is to tank, man.
It is.
It really is.
Trust me, I would love to have a top 5 pick in this draft. This draft is ridiculous this year, and the Ducks could get an exact type of player they need with some of the goal-scoring wingers that are at the top of this draft. So, but the only way I could see it getting better is if the Ducks goaltending all of a sudden, like if John Gibson just jumps back up to the godlike levels he was at last year, then obviously it's going to be better. But I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think in front of him, the Ducks aren't going to start magically scoring more goals. The power play is just not going to get fixed, or it's been sort of fixed, right? It's been a little bit better, but it's not going to all of a sudden jump into a top half of the league. The defense in front of him, with the way it's structured right now, is not going to get much better. There's really no one the Ducks could add that's already in system here to really turn things around. So I don't think it's going to get better, but that's not a bad thing. Like we got to remember this. We've been spoiled as Ducks fans over the last decade. When you look at how successful this team's been in the playoffs and in the regular season, now it's obviously disappointment as well, because they're one of those 4 teams that were super successful that didn't win a cup up there with Tampa, Nashville, and San Jose. But we've been spoiled with good hockey. And right now, being bad is good for the long term, because the Ducks will get some valuable pieces to add to what they already have with Trevor Zegras and some of the young prospects they have here, and John Gibson, to hopefully be a competitive team in 3 or 4 seasons.
So Vinny Mangina in chat says, if the right moves are made, how many years until we see the Ducks back competitive in the playoffs? And is Getzlaf on the team when the time comes? If not, who's the next captain? Let's answer the first question. How many years till we're competitive in the... Okay, so competitive and in the playoffs, to me, means you're not bouncing the first round.
I think competitive, not bouncing the first round. You're going past the first round, and you're like a top 4, top 5 team in the conference type thing. That's what I'm assuming. For
me, it's you could do it a number of ways. You could do it the long-term way by trying to keep your veteran players because you feel like you owe it to them and they don't want to move. You don't want to uproot guys. You have this locker room thing that all the old school guys talk about, which is real. There really is a locker room sort of vibe that has to be carried on around a team for sure. But I think it's time to sell. I think the Ducks could really be competitive here within 2 years if they play it right. If they do the long-term haul, which I don't think this team is set up to do, because this is a small market team that needs to be competitive to make money. I think that going on the 4 to 5 year plan is way too long. It's not what happens in the NHL anymore.
You can't. You got Lindholm and Gibson, and you can't do 4 or 5 years. You just can't.
It has to be
your window then is super small. It has
this team has to be competitive in 2 to 3. Yep.
I think they could do it. Now, like a lot of ifs, ands, and buts have to happen. The Ducks have to get a top 5 pick this year. Likely, if you don't get Lafreniere or Byfield, you have to get like a Cole Perfetti or an Alex Holtz, who are pure snipers, to go with Trevor Zegras. That is huge for the Ducks. If they can go out and get a player like Alex Holtz, who is one of the best shooters to come out of the draft since like Patrick Laine, and pair him with an elite passer and playmaker like Trevor Zegras, that's a huge step forward for the Ducks. That's 2 pieces off the board that any team needs, is an elite goal scorer and an elite playmaker. Then you've got, hopefully, if you can keep Ricard Raquel, obviously Jones, Steele, Terry, Comtois, Benoit Olivier Groux, when he should be up in obviously he's in AHL next year. Braden Tracy, those guys will come up and hopefully play a role. Like, it's all ifs, ands, and buts with prospects.
Yep.
And then you would hope Jackson Lacombe and Henry Thrun can at least be scraping the surface on the NHL, and the Ducks can go out somewhere, whether trade, draft, free agency, get a right shot defenseman and play him as well, and then have John Gibson still. That can all be done in 2, I think, is a stretch, because you've got a lot of these guys who have to come up from junior and play.
Yeah.
I hope some guys can step into the NHL and play right away. I think 3 is that sweet spot. If the Ducks can be competitive in 3 years, they're in a very good spot to have a bigger window. But I could, if things don't pan out, if guys just don't work out, this could be 4 or 5. Like, it very well could be. If Braden Tracy doesn't turn out, if none of Steele, Comtois, Terry, or Jones turn out to be second line players,
God, terrible.
It will be a
that
problem.
Would be the worst situation here in Anaheim.
Yeah, same with
It would
Lundstrom. We throw that
really
in there. If none of those guys turn out to be second line players, you've got a problem. You've got a big
definitely.
problem. Same with Andre Kasha. Because you could go, like, let's assume they get Holtz. Raquel, Zegras, and Holtz, if they turn out to be what they think they are, that's a very good first line. If Zegras is a 70, 80-point player, if Holtz is a 30-goal scorer, if Rickard Raquel is still Rickard Raquel, that is a very good first line. But then you've got to hope that the guys you already have and the other guys coming up, and Grew and Tracy, can be second-line players. And if they're not, you've got a long way to go trying to get those guys, whether it's free agency or a trade or moving out some of the assets you have. I hope 3. To answer the question, I hope 3, but I could see 4 or 5.
Yeah. Do you think Getzlaf's here at that time?
I think he ends his career with the Ducks.
But you think he's going to be here for another 3 seasons?
At some point, you're going to have to decide between Henrique and Getzlaf. If Trevor Zegras is here next year,
Getzlaf
center,
is got a bunch of kids. He's 34. I think maybe he's going to do the Timu 1 year at a time and see how it goes after this deal.
Yeah, like the Joe Thornton type thing with the Sharks.
Yeah.
I think
1
so.
year at a time to see what happens. I don't know.
Back, and I think he stays. I mean, he's going to be the franchise's best player. And I don't think he wants to go anywhere. I just think if you're the Ducks, you have to make a decision at some point, because you're going to have all these young guys in the lineup, and hopefully they start improving. And if your 1-2 down the middle is going to be Zegras and Steele, if everything works out, you've got to make a decision then between Adam Henrique and Ryan Getzlaf for that third-line center spot on who you're going to have. And I would rather it be Ryan Getzlaf, personally, player-wise and leadership-wise, and just because he's Ryan Getzlaf and what he means to this team. And it would be nice to see him get another couple shots here with the Ducks as a competitive team. But you can't, cap-wise and everything else, you can't run with Henrique and Getzlaf both here at the same time. If Steele and Zegras take over those 1-2 center spots, you just can't have it.
All right, real quick, because we got to get to the question on Instagram. But Brett says, do you think Getzlaf sticks with the team after he retires? I don't know. I think he would take a break and then take a peek back at it.
He doesn't strike me as a guy that wants to or is willing to be a coach or be anything after the game.
He's got too many young kids.
He's a Timo type guy to me.
He's got to do that.
Yeah, he's got a family, and he's going to just enjoy retirement. Like, that's what I feel like Ryan Getzlaf is going to be. He doesn't. Scotty Niedermayer, when he was in the league, you felt like he was going to be a guy that would coach or do something somewhere. Ryan Getzlaf just doesn't strike me as that guy. Not to say he wouldn't be a good coach. He doesn't seem like a guy who wants to do that. Now, I
don't think so either.
I don't see it. We answered this question, but I'll read it just because I'm thankful for him sending a question on Instagram. Zom David B said, "Are the Ducks going to turn it around anytime soon?" We just went over that a bit. Travi Bear said, "Who should the Ducks be selling at the deadline?" We said Silfverberg, Manson. At least 100% Silfverberg, in my opinion, they should be looking to sell. But Manson, Raquel, Kasha, all those guys could be in the mix for that. And then Chip sent us like 5 questions if you want to go through those.
Yeah, she's got some funny ones in there. So, well, let's see. Did you already get to Zombie David B?
Yep, and Travi Bear.
Okay, and then we got Travi Bear.
Got his.
Okay, so now we're on. I know you said them. I'm just making sure you got all of them. Yeah, the rest are Chips, and then there's one from Vika. So we'll go with Chip. She says, "Does seeing Perry make a play like that out of a Ducks uniform affect you differently than in a Ducks uniform?" I don't think it was an intentional dirty play. I think he was dumb for coming in across the middle like that, and you wonder his intentions with his history.
Yeah, like. You can always say you're not biased, but you probably are. You know what I mean? Like, I love to say I'm not biased, but I probably am towards Corey Perry because he is my favorite player, and he has been for a long time. So it is hard to be biased. I feel like if somebody else did that to a Ducks player, maybe I would be looking at this a bit differently. But I would like to think I wouldn't. This situation, no matter who it is, you can kind of clearly see what Corey Perry's trying to do there. Like, if you take off the name and you just give me two players and the incident of this play happens, I'd like to think I would say the same thing. That player A, in this case Corey Perry, was reaching to try and deflect the puck with his stick, and the follow-through and the crouch down from Ryan Ellis just resulted in a shoulder to the head. And it's unfortunate, but it happened. And I would like to think no matter if Corey Perry was involved or not, I would say the same thing, but you never know. You never know. There's a lot of bias in here for sure.
I agree with that. I feel like he deserved the suspension for sure. Do I think the league's inconsistent? Yeah. Very much so. Chip also asks, can I borrow $3,000 for the Gabe Hughes Perry jersey?
It's unreal.
And then she said, please.
It's going for that, eh?
Pretty please. Sorry, Chip, I don't have the free flow of cash to donate to you for that cause.
I just did not win the 70K Lotto Max that's in Canada right now. So if I did, I would definitely buy you that jersey, but I don't have $70 million right now. So
kind of funny. All the takes about Corey Perry's long walk of shame. Dan Carcillo, very much the advocate for anti-head injury, taking hitting. Basically, I feel like he's on the path of taking hitting and definitely fighting out of youth hockey. He made the comment I want the league to throw the book at Perry, but I might let it slide because of that walk of shame was just awful to watch.
That was tough. That's punishment enough right there.
Yeah,
and that walk was so long. My favorite videos from that were people dubbing songs on that, like Green Day's Boulevard of Broken Dreams, and my favorite was the World Junior penalty song. I don't know if you've heard that this year, but it's I gotta find it and I'll play it for you because the World Juniors.
The Curb Your Enthusiasm was good too.
Yeah, the World Juniors are in the Czech Republic right now, and the penalty song they use is hilarious. Here it is.
That's great.
That's the penalty song they've been using this year for the World Juniors, and it's just great. And they dubbed it to Corey Perry walking with this walk of shame.
This is a long ass walk.
This video ends and he's still walking.
They should have honestly made those pathways ice. They really should have made those ice.
They weren't even that long for the Stadium Series. They were long for the Stadium Series game, but they weren't that long. They weren't that long.
Chip also, our last question says, would you rather fight 50 chip-sized chips or one 50-foot chip? It's a very interesting question. If you guys don't know how tall Chip is, the word tall doesn't really get associated with her name. She's very short. I think I would go...
with the 50 chip-sized chips.
I would go with 50 chips too.
50-foot anything, you would die. I could fight a 50-foot baby and I would lose. It's 50 feet tall. Just step on me, I'm dead. But at least I have a chance with 50, 4 foot, whatever people running at me.
4 foot 10 people.
4 foot 10.
Yeah. Poor Chip.
5'2". We'll give her a little bit of an edge here.
So
I'd probably die, but I have a chance. I have a
Yeah,
chance. I could knock off a few.
You have a puncher's chance. Yes, you do.
You get that. You knock off a few, and then you go down fighting at least.
Yeah, because eventually you're going to be overtaken, right? Unless you have some sort of weapon to make it easier.
Depends if I'm fighting 50 at once, or it's one after. I fight
one.
one.
You would still be tired.
Yeah,
You'd
but
be tired.
I feel like you get better chance that way, right? If I'm fighting 50 at once, I'll maybe get 2 and then I'm done. But if I'm fighting one gladiator style, one after another, and I just have to take them down, there's a chance you could get through that. You get tired, but you might.
I don't know. Shane says you'd lose to a regular sized baby.
Probably. He's not wrong.
Last question that we're going to wrap. Vika B97 said, should the Ducks utilize a 3-goalie system?
Does any team utilize a 3-goalie system right now?
Don't, unless you have to with injury. No.
You know what's an interesting development this year in the league is most teams, at least not most teams, but a lot of teams are going with a split this year, splitting their goalies. All of a sudden, Boston.
It's game management. It's all that nutritional and health stuff. Game management.
But it's just out of nowhere. It was always, we're going to ride this guy 60 to 70 games, and then we'll have the
those
backup
days are over.
for
League's
whatever.
too fast.
And like the first team, I feel like that was doing it a lot was Boston for the last 2 years. Have been kind of splitting Tuukka Rask with Yaroslav Halak, and I guess teams have seen how well that's worked. But you've got the Islanders with Varlamov and Greiss splitting like every game. You've got some teams obviously can't, but who's another team here? St. Louis is now doing that with Binnington and Allen. Arizona doing that with Kemper and Raanta before Kemper got hurt. Dallas was another one doing that with Bishop and Khudobin, where they were splitting every game. Like a lot of teams are doing that now that they can. Obviously, teams like Winnipeg can't because their backup isn't that good, so you might as well just play Hellebuyck the way he's playing. And Toronto's the same way, where it's just Freddie Anderson, so you kind of have to play him almost every game you can because the backup isn't reliable. But it seems like a lot of teams are kind of trending in that direction. It feels like backup goaltenders are becoming a lot more valuable, a good backup goaltenders, where you have a guy like Halak's a borderline starter, I think, for a lot of teams.
Yeah,
the way
sure.
he's consistently played the last few years as a almost a guy who still starts 30 to 40 games.
Toronto could really use an almost starter backup goaltender.
We have an almost startup backup goaltender who could be on the market, in Ryan Miller.
Yeah, not with his performance. I mean, dude, the way their numbers are this year, I mean, maybe not, but someone would still take a chance on Ryan Miller.
But I mean,
sure.
look at Yaroslav Halak's numbers this year: 9-3-5, .930 save percentage, and a 2.20 goals against average. You got better numbers than Tuukka Rask, and he's played 17 games. Tuukka Rask has played 25. Like that's not a pure split, but it's close. And I think the two teams who've been utilizing a lot are Boston and Dallas. Khudobin's played 17 games and Bishop's played 28. Like that's a pretty decent split when you think of backups. Like that's more than just playing back-to-backs. Like these guys are getting their own starts as well.
Well, the best goalie in the league's almost back and playing. Darcy Kemper was week to week, but now he went through a practice and took shots on him. So see how he goes, man. But maybe most underrated top goaltender league will be back.
Underrated duo in the league because Antti Ranta's good on his own right. And
he was injured when he came to Phoenix, or to Arizona rather.
Rattled off a few good starts here in Darcy Kemper's absence. So you've got some pretty good goaltending duos. The Ducks had one of the best last year, probably the best last year. Yep. In Gibson and Miller. So they were right up there, but they weren't even utilizing. I mean, imagine if the Ducks did that last year. Maybe John Gibson doesn't get fatigued if they were rolling a similar system to what Boston and Dallas were doing. Like, yeah. I would be very interested to see how many games John Gibson had started at the 41-game mark last year compared to some of these other guys, or at least Ryan Miller, right? Like, I can tell you I with almost 100% confidence that Ryan Miller got nowhere near 17 starts 41 games into the season last year. John Gibson was playing almost on a nightly basis.
Checking this, and then we got a wrap. Let's see.
I'd be surprised if it was more than 10 starts in the first 41 for Ryan Miller last year, depending on how many back-to-backs the Ducks had.
So we're going to go all the way back to October.
By the way, it's 5-0 Canada right now.
Shut up. October to January 5th, 2018 to 2019. John Gibson played 35 games. Ryan Miller with 10. Chad Johnson with 2.
So, and is that after 41 games played, or
no? It's just total times in net. I'm on natural stat trick, so maybe I didn't.
Is this at the January 4 mark of last year?
Yes, January 5th of 2019.
Either way, I mean, we're at it more than at last year's pace, more than 41 games into the season, and Ryan Miller only had 10 of those starts.
Yeah. Yep.
So, again, imagine how February and March could have gone for the Ducks if Ryan Miller had have shaved off 7 of those John Gibson starts and gave him a little bit more energy to keep going. That article is kind of infamous now that when Eric Stevens mentioned that John Gibson was so fatigued last year that he'd lost weight. Like at that point, how are you not realizing that maybe Ryan Miller's playing great? Why do we not give John Gibson a rest here or there? It's not like John Gibson was the only one playing well. You know what I mean? I could understand if Miller was struggling, the Ducks had a backup goaltender who just couldn't do anything. But Miller's numbers were almost as good as John Gibson's.
Mm-hmm.
And they just said, we're not going to play this guy.
That's Randy Carlyle's style. Plus, those guys want to play too, man. They're competitive.
No, for sure. And John Gibson definitely wants to play. But at some point as a coach, you got to step in and say, hey, or as management, you got to say, hey, man, like, you're so tired, you're losing weight. Like, we need to give you some rest, get the other guy in here. You're not going to lose your starting job. That's why they brought in the performance, the performance, athletic manager, Beadle came in for these reasons. And the Ducks, Gibson started the last 4 games for the Ducks.
Yeah, well, they want to see they're just testing his durability at this point, right?
I guess.
When's the next show, my friend? I got a jet here in a second, but
Wednesday, I think, because the Ducks played Tuesday and Thursday, I believe.
Sunday, Tuesday, Thursday. So Wednesday will be the next Forever Mighty show. Patreon shows, they're going to be more.
Yes.
We got one probably next week.
Well, we had Pucks and Brews. Everybody that caught that live 2 days ago, will be uploaded today. Hopefully, I'm still working out some kinks with that. I just got to upload it, and that will be up. And then we'll have another Pucks and Brews for January because the last Pucks and Brews was technically for December. We just didn't have any time to get it in December, and then we also have a rant/other bonus episode show. The rant show sometimes becomes another show. Like on the last show for the rant show, it was an all-decade team by me and Jason. So sometimes it's the rant show if we can find rant topics. Sometimes it just becomes a completely different show nonetheless. But we will have 2 Patreon bonus episodes plus a new Forever Mighty podcast on Wednesday. So
yeah. So stay in tune for those. Follow us on social media. Twitter's the best spot to find us for any updates where we're going to post things.
Shane says we'll be waiting for the rescheduled tweet.
Oh, please, Shane.
No, it's a new year, new us.
Man.
We're trying to be like we were last year, where we actually
we will be
on time with this stuff. So
no, we got this. Thank everyone for tuning in. Thanks Cool Hockey for the sponsor. Go to coolhockey.com to buy your Ducks jersey or your NHL jersey that you want or need or want to send as a gift. Use the code FM20 to receive 20% off your order. And you can use that every time. I don't think it's not set to an account, is it? Right? You can keep buying jerseys at that discounted rate.
Yeah, you can keep using it at that rate.
Yeah, so use that. Great place to go. They're legit. They've been supporting us for day one for this, and we can't thank them enough. So, all right, guys. See you guys on Wednesday. Have a great weekend.
See you guys.